Welcome to Holy Health, the podcast where cutting-edge health insights meet timeless biblical wisdom. Join us as we explore the latest in wellness, fitness, and mental health, all while grounding our journey in the spiritual truths and guidance found in the Torah. Whether you're looking to nourish your body, mind, or soul, we'll help you live a life of balance, vitality, and faith. Tune in to discover how to achieve holistic health through the perfect blend of modern science and ancient wisdom. Let's dive into the fullness of life, body, and spirit together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Holy Health. Very, very happy. We have a lot of new listeners, and as such, here and there I'm trying to put out reruns of some of our previous episodes that many of you maybe never got a chance to listen to, whether it was because we were early days of the war, or whether you're just a new listener who did not know about our podcast before. So this week we are putting out a rerun. Originally, I had this titled under Teenage Mental Health because I feel like teenage mental health is such a big thing. However, this episode is with Dr. Acina Stein, who is a functional psychiatrist. And really what it's talking about is the root of mental health. The reason I felt like this episode was so important to put out again is that here in Israel these days, there is so much talk about mental health in regards to our soldiers. I believe the 19th soldier this year took his own life yesterday. And there's a huge group of Milam soldiers who have been for over a month kind of camped out by the Knesset begging, Bibi and other MKs to come out and speak to them because they feel they are just not getting the services they need. We have a lot of soldiers suffering with PTSD. There are many different types of treatments that can help with this, including a lot of research has been done on the use of psychedelics. I have an episode on this topic and we're working on an extro for it as well. But the information from Dr. Stein that she gave us in this episode, I feel is so valuable. These soldiers that are sitting there who feel like just at a loss, because if somebody's struggling from mental health and you give them a lot of tasks to do before they can get the help that they need, are you really helping them? And it's part of the problem. I always kind of half jokingly talk about how the fact that Israel is still the socialist country. And it's sort of like that. In order for some of these soldiers to get help that they really require, there's a lot of paperwork that needs filling out. And if you're struggling with your mental health, are you going to be able to perform the tasks required to maybe fill out all of this paperwork? So we're kind of in this loop here where people are just unable to get some of the help that they need. And I'm not going to say that some of the things that Dr. Stein talks about are things that are easy to do, but there are many things in our lives that can help have an effect on your mental health. And some of these things are what I like to call like low-hanging fruit, where you can do some things that are fairly easy that might have even a small impact. But if you can do a few things that have a small impact, they could add up to an even bigger impact. And I'm never going to say that it's easy because one of the things that Dr. Stein talks about is gut health. We know today that there is such a strong connection between what's going on in your gut and what is going on in your brain. And often changing our gut can be very, very difficult, especially when you're suffering. But I did feel like getting this information out again for some of you who maybe this is new to, who have never heard this information before. I just felt like this was a good time to bring this episode back out again. So you may kind of hear me talking at the beginning about this being in terms of teenage mental health, but everything we're talking about really applies to everyone. And if there's anything I can do to help anyone maybe get the resources that they need, please feel free to reach out to me. If you're watching this video on YouTube, first of all, thank you. Second of all, please hit a thumbs button. I don't care if it's a thumbs up. I don't even care if it's a thumbs down. Because as we know from these hateful anti-Israel people, that any comment you're writing on anything is going to help the algorithm. So if you've got a comment for any of my episodes, good or bad, please feel free to try to at least hit the like button, hit the share button, share it with someone who you think could benefit, because we are really trying to grow the YouTube channel in addition to just the Spotify and Apple. So I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to welcome all of the new listeners. And as always, if you are someone who feels that you could give us some of your wonderful Torah insight, I'd love to hear from you. Or if you feel like you've got a topic that could benefit my audience, I'd love to hear from you as well. Once again, I'm wishing you guys a Shabbat Shalom in the hopes that by the time this episode actually comes out, our hostages will be home, as will all of our soldiers safely. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Holy Health. My guest today is Dr. Acina Stein. Dr. Stein is board certified in psychiatry and integrative holistic medicine. Dr. Stein worked in Pennsylvania for 6 years prior to moving to Rhode Island. Since her training, she's worked in public sectors of mental health for over 20 years. Dr. Stein began her journey into functional medicine when she joined Visions Healthcare in 2009. In 2020, she published her book, What If It's Not Depression? She's won numerous awards and been featured on numerous podcasts. She lives in Rhode Island and is married with 3 children. So, first of all, I just want to welcome you and thank you so much for agreeing to do this and on such short notice. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's anybody who wants to talk about functional medicine, I'm happy to be there in the discussion. Absolutely.
Okay, well, great. So the way I found Dr. Stein was I was listening to another podcast, which is what I'm often doing when I'm stuck in an hour of traffic every morning. And, when you plan it into your day, it works okay. You don't have to get stressed over it. And it gives me, time to listen and hear what's going on. And I was so excited because for me, I've been talking for a long time. I'm putting out this episode on teenage mental health. That's sort of a culmination of speaking to a bunch of different people. And when I heard she was a functional psychiatrist, I was like, oh, I need her. This is what I really, really want people to hear, in addition to all the other great information they've heard from other people. So that was exciting for me.
Yeah. Yay.
So one of the things I heard was that the way that it sounded like to me was that you had a story that I often say, I'm a physical therapist and like the shoemaker's children, you know what I mean? And there are times my kids are, I don't know how they're exercising. They're not wearing barefoot shoes like I want them to. And, so my understanding is that you had a situation in your own family. Is it okay to ask you about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I talk about it in my book, What If It's Not Depression? Your Guide to Finding Answers and Solutions. And it is definitely the reason why I became a functional medicine doctor. And so in 2010, my son had an acute mental health crisis. And he's also very much okay with me talking about it. Without giving personal details about his present life. In the past is the past, and in the present is the present, and he was fine with me giving this information as well. So, so in 2010, we were actually living in France. My husband's a professor, and he was on sabbatical. We took the kids out of school, and we were homeschooling them in India for 2 months and then France for 2 months. And one of these days after a lesson at home, my boys had a tiff and then suddenly he was gone from the room, and we're in this 2-bedroom studio type of a apartment. He couldn't have gone very far. And I just happened to look out the corner of my eye, and I see him outside of the apartment on the ledge, 5 floors up, ready to jump. And he was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Get back in here. Long story short, he basically had suicidal ideations and he wanted to kill himself. And this was something that just happened overnight. And here I am, a mom, a psychiatrist, no sign of this, of this prior to this event, that he was having any kind of mental health issues other than, the typical, adolescent boy issues, so for him to do something like that was really, extraordinary. So I had him see a psychiatrist when we got home, and also a therapist. He was put on 4 medications ultimately, and I just couldn't figure out like what happened, what was going on, why did this happen? That was the question that kept coming up for me, and nobody was giving me any answers. And the thing is, I knew I decided that there had to be something else going on, even though both sides of our family had significant depression in our families. But I felt like there's something else going on. And the one symptom that he had was a neurological symptom. He had double vision. And it occurred at the same time that this acute mental health crisis occurred. And we didn't even figure out that he had double vision. It showed up as here he is, an avid reader, that after this event, he couldn't read anymore, or it would strain his brain so much that he just couldn't continue to read. And we didn't figure out that it was double vision until I was teaching him how to drive. Wow. And he said, Mom, like which line am I supposed to be next to? That one or that one? It's like, there's only one line. Stop the car and get out of the seat. So it's like, no wonder you keep hitting the curb or over, going over the other side of the street, in order to make a right or a left. He kept making those mistakes, and finally we put it together. So he literally did not get his license for another 2 years because of that.
Oh my gosh. It was bad enough. Andy couldn't get his license.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, serendipitously, I found a functional medicine doctor. I had no idea what functional medicine was until then. And I ended up, he had testing done. He ended up having celiac disease. He got a gene from me and one from my husband. And his mother most likely had celiac disease, but refused to acknowledge it. But his aunt, the mother's sister, definitely has celiac disease. So it runs on his side of the family, my husband's side of the family. But anyway, celiac disease, malnourished because all he ate was white food. The only vegetable he ate was broccoli. It was a good vegetable to choose, but the only one he ate. Only ate white food, lots of milk products, cheese, butter, popcorn, rice. And I mean, he ate meat too, but that's not a healthy diet. Lots of sugar as well, which is just typical of the standard American diet. And so, he basically, did not do well. And it started from a very early child where he had severe constipation, severe eczema. And those were things that we just assumed that was going to just be part of who he was. But those were clues that he had inflammation in his body from a very, very early age. And when we made changes in his diet, specifically removing gluten and dairy, and then we found out that he was also sensitive to soy. So removing those 3 categories caused the lifelong constipation, meaning lifelong of 14 years, and lifelong eczema go away in 2 months. 2 months. And so these were things that he was suffering from, and he definitely then took it took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and went with it, and was on board the whole process because he was suffering with those 2 things and they disappeared. So he kept moving forward in terms of changing his diet and doing all of the things that you need to do to rebalance your life in terms of food, and exercise and sleep hygiene, doing all the things that he needed to do. And eventually, within 2 years, he was able to come off of all 4 medications. And the diplopia, the double vision, was the thing that took the longest to resolve because those are cranial nerves that are involved. Mm-hmm. That's how inflamed his body was. Wow. So yeah, it was definitely an incredible journey with him. And he was definitely significantly better. And at that point, it was definitely a crisis in faith in my field of psychiatry and medicine in general. And I knew I couldn't practice psychiatry or medicine in the same way. So from that day forward, I basically asked the person who was treating him to hire me as a psychiatrist, an integrative psychiatrist at that time. And then, I got certified in functional medicine in 2017, and that's all I do is functional medicine. I have some psychotherapy patients, but soup to nuts functional medicine to find root causes for people of depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. But there are a lot of people who come to me who are, suffering from lots of symptoms, and they know that root cause medicine really resolves lots of symptoms, not just targeting specific silos. And so people come to me to help them with lots of things, not just mental health issues.
So that's what I was going to ask you. And when people are coming for mental health issues, knowing that you're a functional psychiatrist, I mean, is there anybody that you're seeing where there's not something that functional medicine would teach us, whether it's gut health or, toxic overload are there symptoms resolving just from the change in diet or the, getting rid of toxins, sauna usage, whatever they're doing to get rid of toxins and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Everyone gets better a little bit, and
Mhm.
and there's going to be a certain percentage of people that get worse before they get better. It just depends on how sick they are. I use the analogy of like if you had, um, let's say, a 100-year-old house that hasn't been touched, right? And you just bought it, right? And it's covered with dust. There's cobwebs everywhere, right? And there's mold, maybe, right? And as you're cleaning up, you're disturbing the dust. You're disturbing everything. And if you don't protect yourself while you're doing that, you're going to get sick, right? So you have to do this disturbance and to get things moving in order for things to get moving out of. So when you're cleaning out a closet, you have to pull everything out and it looks like a big mess before you can organize it and get rid of stuff you don't want, give away stuff you don't need, and put things back in. So there are some people that have really congested or blocked detox pathways or are very, very sedentary, or, they just haven't done anything, that when you start moving things along, there's going to be a little inflammation being from those disturbances, and they may get worse before they get better. And certainly, people who are experienced in doing this can kind of smooth the road a little bit, so that they're not really flaring. But for the most part, most people do get better over time. It definitely takes time. There's a lot of things that have to be addressed. It's work. And so you have to be willing and motivated to be able to do that work. And some people are so sick that they don't have the energy or the motivation to do that. And that's why, I practice conventional medicine as well. There's tools in the conventional world as well that are just as appropriate in those situations where if you're so, for example, so psychotic or manic that you cannot organize yourself or be present to be able to organize yourself, or even depressed, so depressed that you can't think or you're so anxious and you have this constant loop in your brain that's preventing you from being able to focus. That's where medications do come in play. So there is a place for that, but it's certainly not the answer to all the issues. There's a place for it, but there's certainly limitations. It doesn't fix the problem. It does suppress the symptoms and controls the symptoms to the degree that hopefully you can function and be able to do the work of functional medicine. And that's where there's so many tools that all the tools should be utilized and determined for that each specific person, what's the right tools for that specific person. And so it does become very personalized.
which is great because that's what we want, right? Someday in the future, hopefully everybody will be able to have personalized medicine for them, because it is difficult when, it's like one symptom and everyone's given the same thing, but three people can have the same symptom, but it could be coming from something different. And it's the same in physical therapy. That's why when people try to ask me, like, my knee hurts, I'm like, I have to evaluate you. Like,
Right.
it can be coming from a different problem. It's not your knee. I can assure you that's where the pain is. But to find out the root cause of that, like, it requires an evaluation and a history and all of that.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, if I'm not mistaken, I think we said 2014 is when you went into functional medicine. Am I right about that? Or maybe a little bit earlier? 2000.
Oh, no, no. 2010 is when I had this experience with my son.
Okay.
And I basically started working with Visions Healthcare. Dr. Edward Levitan, it was the medical director at the time. He was the person who treated my son. That place has closed since, and that was in 2012. And then the place closed in 2015, and he opened a practice called Five Journeys in Massachusetts with his wife. And so I started my practice in 2015, 2016.
Okay. So I guess the reason I'm asking you is when I think back to like 2012 or around that time, life was a little bit different. I mean, it's hard to imagine because 10 years has gone by so quickly. But, cell phone usage was different then. I don't think there was any Instagram then. There might have been Facebook, but it wasn't the same as it is now. And I'm wondering, have you seen a change in the amount of teenagers? That's sort of what I'm focusing on here with depression and anxiety and these other psychiatric or mental health type symptoms. Have you noticed an increase?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's always increasing. So one of the things that was increasing from that point on, certainly cell phones and social media and, certainly the pandemic has affected them. So there's numerous things. There's a lack of socialization. I feel like the kids these days spend little time with each other and more time on their phone. I'm always amused and saddened by seeing a table of kids out like at a restaurant and everyone's looking at their cell phone. They're not even interacting with each other. They're just looking at their phones and they think that's what it is to be together. And that's really sad. And I feel like that has somehow, you know, cause them to not be able to have back and forth conversations. They're not comfortable having conversations or getting on the phone to have conversations. Like we used to complain about kids being too much on the phone talking, right? Like now I wish it was talking on the phone. I remember as a kid yelled at for being on the phone too much, right?
Right, right.
But at the same time, I think it's a matter of helping kids to negotiate new things, just like when we were kids and we had phones, and there was a time when there weren't phones, right? So, how much I wonder how much of this is us as adults getting used to, changes that occur in every generation, and how much is, learning new ways of communication and not necessarily expecting these teenagers to communicate in the way that we expect. So, I think it's finding that balance that's really, really important. But it is important to learn how to communicate and teach our children how to communicate, practice that with them, as opposed to getting angry and upset or frustrated with them, right? To say, hey, this is the way I communicate. I know you like to communicate this way. Can we find this, this balance? I'm certainly trying to practice that with my own kids who are 20, 29, 28, and 24, I think. 28.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 28, 26, and 24. So, yeah, so we talk about these things all the time. And yeah, but yeah, overall, absolutely, there has been an increase, and there are multiple variables, and it does also still include food. I mean, the diet here is very highly processed. It gets more and more processed as we go along. There's so much fake food out there, full of sugar. But sugar has been a problem since the 1950s when it was introduced. The processed sugar that was changed from cane sugar to processed sugar and high fructose corn syrup that was introduced by Nixon because the cost of food was so high. So he allowed for high fructose corn syrup to be used instead of sugar. And that's where things started. And Betty Crocker, cakes, the instant cakes made life easier. But I don't think we knew at that I'm sure we didn't know that how that these foods are really processed, and the more processed the food is, we're not getting the nutrients that we need, because even though these foods are fortified with vitamins, they're all synthetic vitamins. And our bodies, our cells, our genes don't know what to do with that. And so a lot of people end up being malnourished, especially if they have specific genetic single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs as we call them. So, there are going to be people who are not going to be able to handle certain types of foods for those reasons. And that's just one reason. Then there's all the pesticides that are sprayed on our foods. And glyphosate is huge in terms of killing our microbiome. Now, we didn't know, we thought, it was going to be safe for humans, but the way glyphosate works, and it's called Roundup. That's another trade name, or whatever you call the brand name of glyphosate, that's made by a company, Monsanto, and it's used worldwide, sprayed on crops, which was supposedly supposed to help on some way to make things cheaper or whatever, harvesting easier. And but anyway, this Roundup kills the bacteria, and not realizing that it could kill the bacteria in our gut, and that affects us. So our bodies rely heavily on us having a healthy microbiome. It's our second brain. And we didn't know that then. We know it now.
Right.
And that's what's happened in the last 10 years.
We learned the hard way.
Learning the hard way. Unfortunately, we're still allowing that product to be on the market, and it affects us every day. So sometimes people say, well, if I'm not celiac, if I don't have celiac, why should I be gluten free? It's for those reasons, because it's sprayed with these pesticides, because it's not necessarily gluten. There's other parts of the wheat that affects us. It's the way it's processed. There's so many reasons why we should not have gluten in our diet, and most people don't tolerate it. There's going to be some people who do, and the only way to know is to do an elimination diet. That is the hallmark, the standard of figuring out whether or not your body is sensitive to these certain foods. And so gluten and dairy are the top two. Soy, corn, nuts, sesame, and am I missing anything else? I think that's it. There's 7 of them. So and
everything fun. Basically, you take all the fun out of it, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I think healthy food could be fun.
Yeah. I'm just kidding.
Right? Yeah.
I'm a big ice cream fan, so.
Yeah, I know. But there is dairy-free ice cream, there's sorbet, there are things fun. And so it's a mindset change, really.
Yeah.
It really is. And believe it or not, one way to know whether or not we have an unhealthy microbiome is if all you crave is sugar and dairy. And so you basically have cultivated a microbiome that wants those foods. You could easily cultivate it to love kale and spinach and fruits and vegetables, and the foods that are actually healthy for you. Those are the healthy microbiome. And honestly, the keystone bacteria that really is the soldiers of your body, your immune system. So if you're feeding, candida, which is a yeast that can cause all sorts of mental health issues, and if you're feeding, all of these other bad bacteria with processed foods, and you're not feeding the bacteria that you really need and what they want are vegetables, the best way to improve your microbiome is a diversity of vegetables. And so, any way you can get vegetables into your body, it's the best thing that you could do to turn around that microbiome and cutting back on the sugar. Just making that change alone can make a huge change, believe it or not, in your mental health.
Yeah. So I wanted to swing back to what you said. One of the things in our community that is really great is that we celebrate Shabbat. So on Shabbat, none of the kids have their cell phones. No one has a cell phone. We spend time with family and friends. And so it is wonderful that our kids do have this technology-free day once a week where they are forced, to hang out with their friends and, not be on electronics. And just for us also to hang out as a family and, have those conversations, which is really great. But you are right that, that the gut microbiome is just so huge in terms of everything. In other words, again, like whatever you're talking about, whatever the symptom is, whatever the illness is, whatever the autoimmune issue is, the end of the day, without changing, gut health, none of it's going to be successful. There hasn't been one person who's come on and has said anything different from that. Different people have said things in different ways, but everybody is paying attention to gut health. That is for sure. And I'm actually interviewing, I think her name is Stephanie Saif. She's an expert on glyphosate, and I think in a week and a half.
Yeah.
And it is a huge problem. So yeah. So you basically are having all of your patients, anybody who's coming in with any mental health symptom is also changing their diet. In other words.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I require it. If they don't want to change their diet, then, or not even, they have to be willing to change their diet. They have to be willing to change. Because when I first started doing functional medicine, I would try to work around that, and it's just not possible. It really is not possible. And I know the vegan diet is really popular, but, in my opinion, it's very hard. It's not impossible, but it's very hard to get all of the amino acids that you need in your diet and enough of them. There are some people who say that, well, there's non-essential amino acids that your body can create using the amino acids that are given, but it just makes it hard for your body to do that. So yes, that's possible, but you really have to eat a certain way in order to get all of the protein that you need in order to make the neurotransmitter that your brain needs. One of the things that I wanted to mention, it's a tip that I love to give people when they have young kids, because I see so many parents giving even babies cell phones to play games, or to watch movies to occupy them. And it's not like, that the parent is busy doing anything. The parent is just kind of sitting there next to them. And, one thing that you can do, what we did when we had our children is, to have a deck of cards. And I don't know how we started doing this, probably just a lucky connection, but our kids really took to playing cards, and we brought a deck of cards everywhere we went. And no matter what, and even standing in line for whatever, some kind of event, we would literally play cards in line or around something, and even at fine dining restaurants, we played cards. And to this day, I swear to God, to this day, that we still play cards. Wherever we go, we play cards as a family, and we love that. And I think that's an easy way to just, and you can play so many different card games at different age levels too. So it's a great way to connect to your children, and to sort of break the ice, so to speak, is just start playing cards. So carry a deck of cards, very small.
I really think it's a great idea because it is interactive. As opposed to like, I was thinking back to how you said, everyone at the table has a cell phone. So like being young and wanting to read a book, because I loved reading as a kid, like I'd be reading a book at the table and, my mom would be like, put away, whatever, we're at dinner, put away the book. And now who wouldn't kill for their kid to be like reading a book at the table, like exactly what you're saying. Like that was like, the worst thing. Or like, we all wanted our own in-ground phone line, like that was the teenage girl, That's like, who wouldn't want to go back to that? So I love the idea of the deck of cards because it is interactive. It's not solitaire, you're playing together. And or even, I guess all the old, card games we used to play. I don't know, like I Spy or, all of these other card games.
Exactly. Exactly.
I,
You do have to bring those kinds of things back. And I think even kids this day and age will play those things if the parent initiates that. So part of the problem I think is that parents find it as an easy babysitter. And I can completely get it. I've done it myself where there's situations where you absolutely need to like occupy your child if you're at the DMV and you're to Department of Motor Vehicles and you need to get your registration for your car, something like that. Like you really need to attend something. And but to sit there and just have your child play and you're not doing anything, I think that's teaching your child so many things that you don't want to teach them. And then if they're not paying attention or if they want to go watch this cell phone, you're just training them to do that. And then later on, I see parents getting frustrated with their child for not attending to them, when they're talking to them. Well, so you have to teach them those skills to be able to attend and have conversations and go back and forth and negotiate things. These are all skill building types of things. And so I just encourage, those types of interactions, but starting with the parent, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. And I do think the cards are a really great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you, do you have advice? I have a lot of friends who are various types of therapists and who are incredible. And so many work with adolescents. And do you have advice maybe for people who work with teens, whether they're teachers, whether, they're parents, most of us are parents, whatever, where you're seeing a change in the mental health of your child? I can tell you that in my community of 20,000 people, there's been at least 4 teenage suicides, I want to say, in the past 3 years. And there's a community across like the actual, I guess, like the county, I guess you could call it, that like we live in. I mean, there's been so many, and there's a very large percentage in Israel of like Anglo-Saxon, of like expat Americans and South Africans and British people. And I think that our communities, at least in this area, and there's another city not far from us, have been hit particularly hard, where there has been a high percentage. And most families I know have at least one kid who's struggling with some kind of mental health, whether it's just anxiety or depression. Like, what would your advice be if you see a change in mental health status? Like either to the parent or even to the therapist, maybe to start looking at things a little bit differently.
Well, I mean, I think it's important for one to bring to that child's attention that you notice that something is off and to approach it in a kind, compassionate way and letting them know, hey, this is what I noticed, I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. And if there's anything on your mind, no judgment. I want you to know that I'm here to talk to. I want to help you. I care about you. I love you. There is nothing more important than you being in my life. And I can see, and you might even want to point out what it is that you notice, that is different. And so I think it's opening the door to conversation. It's showing them that you see them. Sometimes people feel invisible and not seen. And so you want to let them know, hey, I see you. I see you. I see you suffering. And I want to help you. I love you. It's very important to make those statements. And if they do open up and say something, to just listen, just listen, zip the mouth.
That's really hard for me. Yeah.
It's really important to listen, because as soon as you give advice, gone. Just gone. So it's listening and saying, I hear you. I understand you. And you may want to repeat what you hear back to them. So what I hear you saying is this, because sometimes our filters of our own filters hear something different than what's actually being stated. And so then what happens as parents, and I'm guilty of it myself, is going into defense mode, right? Or explaining mode, or going into attack mode even, right? Like sometimes parents immediately respond, well, but if you just did this, I would have blah, blah, blah. Like, right? So it's really, really important to close your mouth, not say a word, listen, and breathe in whatever's being said to you. And then potentially, just repeat back what you hear and say, what would you like me to do? Or is there anything that I can do to help you? Or just even nothing. Don't say a word, just hold them, hug them, or but some kids aren't kids that like to be hugged, right?
Mhm.
So just be there with them. Be there with them. Lock eyes, hold their hand. Most usually parents know how their child likes to connect. So if they, pat their back, whatever it is, just say, I hear you, I see you. Connect on some way. Basically, what you want to do is validate. Want to validate their experience and say it's okay to feel this way, because feelings are feelings. All feelings are valid. All feelings are valid. And I think sometimes just acknowledging feelings and letting them know, letting them just release these feelings and being heard. It's so healing, and letting them know that it's okay to feel this way. Oh my gosh, that alone is huge. And I can't tell you how many adults I treat as patients in psychotherapy. Even, I do a little psychotherapy with my functional medicine patients. And the things that come up for them that are from their childhood is really they're things that where their parents, they weren't abusive or neglectful, they just weren't present. So sometimes just being present and being with the child and hearing them out, validating their emotions, letting them, and just say, if you ever want to talk about this again, because it'll come up again, it's not all processed in one fell swoop. If something bothers, I'm here, we'll sit down, we'll have some tea, or we'll go for a walk, or go for a walk and do something and just be there. Just the presence of another person can be healing. Like, I'm here for you, like physically, literally here for you. You don't need to say a word. I think that's so important, just to have, not to be alone. So many of my, adult patients had so much loneliness as a child, and they felt vulnerable. And so you want to let them know that they are safe. They're safe, they're loved, and to validate their emotions, and that you're there for them, you care for them, and to let them know that this is temporary. A big thing is that, especially as teenagers, they don't have like a sense of the future so much. It's only their world and that's it. They can't necessarily see the future. I remember feeling that way when I was 16, and it's important to say this is temporary. You're going to come out of this. This is something that will get better over time. And I think even giving them a sense that they will overcome this. This is so temporary. It's just part of being a teenager. Yeah, it really stank when I was I remember feeling that way. It's like, oh, okay. Gives them a sense like because it's so overwhelming. Emotions are so tumultuous because of the hormones, right? There's so many things going on, right? Just hormones alone is enough to cause
Yeah.
some mood dysregulation, right?
Yeah, that's why I would think at certain ages you probably would tend to see an increase in mental health disorders just because of the change of hormones,
Mm-hmm.
being so
Absolutely.
involved as well. And
Absolutely.
I was going to say, if someone sees their child definitely needs help, would you suggest, if there's not a local functional psychiatrist, but would you suggest, because I'm a big believer in people advocating for themselves, that while absolutely the talk therapy is important and maybe they do need some medication, that they be looking at some type of, I don't know, whether it's blood testing or something like that as
Sure. I
well.
mean, absolutely. In fact, I don't believe that there is enough blood work done, especially on teenagers. Um, the typical blood work, at least done in the United States, for a child or an adolescent, is a complete blood count, a comprehensive metabolic panel, which is looking at electrolytes, kidney function, liver function, um, and maybe a urinalysis. Uh, Rarely is a thyroid profile done. I've had many teenagers have a hypothyroidism, and it's being diagnosed earlier and earlier because these pesticides and chemicals that are in our environment and all the processed, synthetic stuff that we're everything around us, is basically processed or synthetic that our immune systems can't handle, and that can affect your thyroid. The thyroid is a very sensitive organ. So some kids, have fatigue and depression and weight gain, and they think it's just part of adolescence, but it gets to the point where they can't function. And so, they might have hypothyroidism. A full thyroid panel should be done. Another thing that's rarely done in the younger ages is a lipid panel. So a cholesterol, we talk about high cholesterol as being a problem for heart disease and diabetes, but a low cholesterol below 150 is a significant increased risk of depression. And the lower you go, the lower, going down below 80, it increases your risk of suicide. So getting a cholesterol panel and looking at the total cholesterol and making sure it's above 150, it's very important. So that is rarely done. And there's lots of research that supports that statement that I made. So yeah, it's important to do blood work for sure. There, in terms of functional testing, I do a stool test on every patient. And I don't know if the kind of testing I do is available in Israel, but I also do organic acid testing. I do testing as part of my assessment. What's really important, I don't treat test results, I treat the person.
Right, right.
I make an assessment based on symptoms, and I use testing to support my own assessment and conclusions, and to rule in or rule out certain issues. So testing is certainly something to look at, but it's really doing a really good assessment and a good physical exam. I don't know if this is the case in Israel, but the physical exam has been it was rarely done nowadays. It's just looking at heart and lungs pretty much. Not really doing much else. Listening to your heart, listening to your lungs, looking in your mouth, maybe a quick eye exam. It's rarely anything else, but I do a really good neuro exam, as well as a full physical exam, as well as a mental status exam. So it's really important to do all of those things to get, because it does provide clues as to, what to investigate further. So there's a lot of clues on the body, that can help you investigate further. Um,
Well, well, that was exactly really what I wanted to hear from you, is that I just really want to get out there that information that, absolutely you should be there for your child and absolutely you should take them for help. But that I think it is so important for people to look beyond just, I'm taking my kid to a psychologist, like, that you've got to look at the whole greater picture. And that's,
mhm,
that was exactly what I wanted to hear from you, is that, the
mhm.
holistic, the whole, the functional, the finding the root cause is so important. And that absolutely the psychologists and the psychiatrists and the clinical social workers are so, an important piece as well. But that I think that we have to also pay attention to this, like, bigger picture of gut health. And like you're saying, pesticides, toxic overload in the body, EMG overuse or overload, and all of these other things that really can contribute.
Yeah, a lot of times teenagers begin having, just to go back to the hormones a little bit, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
teenagers have mood changes when they hit puberty. And my son had his issues when he hit puberty. And puberty is a time where the body is being remodeled and it requires a great deal of energy. So when teenagers have sudden symptoms around puberty, more than the usual teenage mood changes, but sudden changes in their moods or sudden symptoms besides mood changes, that tells me that the body had an inflammatory load prior to puberty all along. And it was the whole remodeling part of it that caused the immune system to say, hey, I can't handle the remodeling. So everything else comes to the forefront.
Right.
So, in my son's example, he had chronic constipation, chronic severe eczema, which are highly inflammatory. And then when he hit puberty, it just affected his brain, mostly because he was vulnerable in his brain, given our family history. So family history tells you what your vulnerability is, but that doesn't mean it needs to express itself. There's so many things that you can do in terms of lifestyle to turn off those bad genes and turn on the good genes. And it really comes down to lifestyle changes. So there's a lot that can be done, but just having the history of PMS, heavy bleeding, cramps, mood changes, tells me that there's inflammation and there's estrogen dominance. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Mhm.
word, where the estrogen is really high, and because of the stress to the body, the progesterone levels plummet. And so when you have high estrogen and low progesterone, then you're going to have these kinds of symptoms, mood changes and, cramping, pain, heavy bleeding. And same thing with guys too. So, the testosterone goes down in men, but it goes up in women too. So there's definitely hormonal changes, but that also gives you clues that, hey, there was something going on well before puberty, and to look at other root causes. And so many times I'll have histories of, multiple rounds of antibiotics for ear infections or throat infections, or having some type of food poisoning, or having you just lot or concussion, falling off a swing and hitting their head. And ever since then, it's things haven't been right. But when they're really young and they have mental health issues like 3, 4, 5, it's usually food. It's usually food. So, all of the food coloring and artificial ingredients, think there's so much candy that has all of these artificial ingredients and food colorings that some kids are really, really sensitive to. So really going back to, really, eating real food, whole foods and real food. And I know, I mean, I know it's easy to say and hard to do, there's lots of tricks to making that happen. But kids do respond eventually, and it is a matter of staying the course, being patient, and eventually changes do happen and they do get better. But I would definitely try to go the course of making lifestyle changes, even if it means going away for a month, away from everything for a month to a place where you're out in the woods and in a cabin
That's
eating.
great.
I mean, I think it's sometimes you just have to, go on almost like a full retreat with some kids, and they respond. They respond because then they're not being pressured by their friends to be a certain way. And then when they feel well, then they stick to it, because then
Right,
they
it's
like,
easier.
oh, wow. Yeah, it's easier to stick to it when you feel well, especially when you go back to it and you feel horrible, then they make the
Right,
connection, right?
right,
So you got to get the kids buy-in to actually make changes. The kids that have buy-in to this process are the ones that get well. So finding that way is so
right.
have
It
you
it
cannot
makes sense.
through a functional approach. You cannot drag them. That's
Yeah.
traumatizing to them sometimes.
It's true. And one of the hardest things, especially if you're dealing with little kids, is that every day it's a birthday party, it's a holiday, there's
Right.
can't like every single day. So it is really hard, especially with little kids. But I have to tell you, when my kids were little. I mean, now I know, but like when my kids were little, so I used to buy their snacks at the health food store. Okay, now I wouldn't buy those snacks because they're still processed. They're just processed with cane sugar or whatever instead of high fructose corn syrup, but we would get it all, from Trader Joe's or from the health food store or whatever. But even with that, like just because it comes from a health food store doesn't make it healthy. And if you didn't make it in your own kitchen, it's processed. And, even when they try to make, these things healthy, they're really not. And it really is hard with kids. So I guess sometimes you have to do the best you can do. But when it's like a life or death situation, which it can
Right.
become even with some kids, like you have to figure out how to get it done because it's life or
Right.
death,
Yeah. And there's lots of tricks. There's lots of tricks to make that happen. There's plenty of people who see kids all the time that have really good ways of getting vegetables in particular into
Right.
children.
Right. There's a bunch of good cookbooks around about how to hide it and that type of thing. Well,
Right.
let me ask you, what does spirituality mean to you?
Well, it means many things to me, but ultimately it is having a connection with something bigger than yourself. Um, and it's, having a sense of purpose. And yeah, I think that's basically what I think is spiritual. It doesn't have to. I think it's important to have spirituality as part of your life. It's really important to have some connection, meaning, purpose, and especially with a higher purpose of sorts. Yeah.
I agree with you. And pretty much everybody who's ever come on here has whatever their definition of spirituality is. And that's what it's about. If it's just having something, something, whatever that means to you. So I think
Mhm.
that was really good. Thank you so much. And where can people find you if they want to learn more, if they want to get your book?
You can get my book on Amazon. It's called What If It's Not Depression? Your Guide to Finding Answers and Solutions. Where to find me? I am located in Providence, Rhode Island. My practice website is fxnmind.com, Functional Mind LLC. I have a personal website, achinasteindio.com. And I'm on Instagram at Dr. Stein. And I also have a YouTube channel called What If It's Not Depression with Dr. Acina
Okay.
Stein, where I've interviewed many experts of root causes for depression and solutions too. So over 50 episodes now, I think.
Wow.
So yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out and follow you there. And I'm gonna put all the links into the um at the end of our of the podcast, the show notes. The word show notes was slipping my mind. That wasn't good. I was like, oh no. Yeah, show notes. I'm going to put them in the show notes. Yeah, but I just want to thank you again so much for coming on and agreeing to come on at such short notice, because I do want to get this, this episode out within the next few weeks. So thank you so, so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Everyone, welcome back. I have with me today Bracha Krohn. You guys are very familiar with her because she's been with us several times. Bracha is the co-director of Midreshet Moriah, and she works on the educational staff of Camp Stone in the summers, and that is where I am speaking to her today. How are you?
Yeah, good. Welcome to my cabin, my camp cabin with good Wi-Fi today, thank God.
Yeah, remember last year, I think the first one we did, you were out in the middle of a field somewhere, the Wi-Fi.
I walked down the road to get reception data for my phone. Yes, thank God. We're good. Today we're good.
Okay, today we're up here in the 21st century. Is that what we're in? 21st century, I think. Is that what we're in?
Yeah, 21st century.
Okay, good. I'm not so up on all of that, yeah. Okay, great. Well, so what'd you think? I know you listened, and tell me what'd you think?
Well, as always, that was very enlightening, something I didn't know much about. I actually Googled functional medicine after, just to see, like, what is it again? What does everyone say? It was fascinating. I really, really love thinking about holistic approaches to things. In education, I do that all the time with my students, like really thinking about the whole child and context. And here in the summer, I actually spend my time calling parents of my incoming students to just hear from them, what's on their mind, what's on their kids' mind. Like, that's just part of it. You can't really just go to what exactly you're dealing with. You have to step back, do bigger picture. So it spoke to me. It was fascinating. As always, I'll be thinking about it now and thinking about what I eat and where I'm feeling aches and pains and what to do about that.
That's great. Thank you so much. And so what's your tie-in? Like, how do you see this fitting in with?
Okay, so you're always asking me to do a Torah connection. Okay, so as I was listening, I was thinking, okay, then something hit me. I think because here we are starting what we call the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, which is going to be a period for us of repentance. So I'm in that mode. I started to teach a little bit about that here in camp in my classes that I'm giving. And when you started using words like holistic, and one of you said root causes to things, and I started realizing, that's the same way we talk about repentance. And as we go forward now into the months of Elul and Tishrei, and we get to Rosh Hashanah and the Day of Judgment, and there's going to be a lot of talk of repentance in the air now. And I'm thinking that that's really the way we approach repentance, meaning the idea that I need to think about what's wrong. When you just start talking about, I'm jealous of my friend, I want to work on that. I gossip a lot, I want to work on that. I'm not praying, I feel bad. Yes, we could talk about prayer, we could talk about jealousy, we could talk about gossip. But of course, we all know that really I need to step back and think. Wait, where's that coming from in me? Where's the root cause? What's the holistic, approach to this? So I really was thinking of 2 verses that I think about that say this point that I'll share with everybody. And we can all sort of hold on to these. And this is really just mimicking the physical plane. Like I said to you before, the idea of a spiritual plane mirroring the physical plane is so interesting to me and feels so right in the world. So the fact that everything that we're talking about with our bodies in a physical way, that it would remind me of what we do when we talk about spirituality is not a surprise to us. I think, the truth is the truth. So it manifests in all the different areas of our life. So the first pasuk, the first verse I'll mention is in Leviticus in chapter 16, where the Torah, the Bible, speaking about Yom Kippur and the Day of Atonement and the service that was done in the temple on that day. And the famous verse that's used is because on that day, Ki bayom hazeh yichaper aleichem, Hashem will atone. And the phrase is used, litaher etchem, to purify you. We have here what looks like a double language of atonement and purification. Litaher is the purification, lechaper is the atonement, and it seems repetitive, obviously, and superfluous. And Rav Soloveitchik, in one of his Tshuva Drashot, in one of his lectures about repentance, said way back, in the olden days, in the 60s and 70s, when he was giving these Tshuva Drashot, these repentance lectures in Boston, but they're written up in his book on repentance that a student put out. And he says this beautiful thing where kapara, atonement, is for the specific action, right? Okay, I hit my sibling. I spoke poorly about my boss. And that is something I need to do repentance for and think about it. I can gain atonement for it with confession and all of that. But litaher, to purify you, the fact that this day of atonement also purifies, the fact that we're also looking for purification is a different thing. Purification is about the relationship. Purification is the big meta picture. And when you do something to someone, when you offend someone, when you ruin the relationship in some way, it's not always enough to just say sorry and not do that again. There's been a rift, there's been a break. And now I need to also have a certain purification and uplifting and improvement in the whole relationship. And how we're not just talking about specific acts, we're talking about the bigger picture of the relationship. Maybe we could all relate to it, maybe like with trust. I tell over a friend's secret. Yes, I feel bad. I won't do that again. And yes, that's one specific thing and I need atonement. But now we have to worry about the relationship. There's a breach of trust. We have to move forward in that. And that's like a bigger picture. And I think that's something to think about in these days when we're thinking about our relationship with God and where we want to improve. It's not just about the specific acts and making a list of all the things we're going to say confession for, on Yom Kippur. It's also about how am I doing vis-a-vis God and my relationship with God and my relationship with my family, my spouse, my kids, the bigger picture. So obviously with our bodies, of course, that came to me because we're not just talking about the aches and pains in my knee, as you were saying. Okay, I'm feeling a pain in my knee. Let's think where that's coming from. There's a bigger system error here. Okay. So that's one place right away I thought of. And the other place is such a beautiful pasuk in Eicha that we're going to actually read in Lamentations, that we're going to read in a few weeks, right? On the 9th of Av, we're going to sit and read this poem that Jeremiah wrote about the destruction of the temple. And there's a pasuk there that's again, exactly this point when talking about repenting at the very end. Or in the middle, I guess, Parag Gimel in the 3rd chapter, when talking about the way that we have to think about how this destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem, is brought about because of things we've done, and we have to take responsibility for it. So the pasuk is Nachpesa dirachinu v'nachkora v'nashuva ad Hashem. We will search our ways, and we will investigate, and then or thus return to God. So again, double language, it seems. Nachpesa, as we will search, lechapes. Nachkor, chakira. Mechkar is research. We'll investigate. So again, I don't remember who said this. This is like one of those things, I remember learning when I was little, but it really resonated, so I remember it. The idea is we are going to search our ways. That means I'm going to find what I'm doing wrong. I'm telling people secrets. I'm gossiping about people. I'm missing prayer times. Whatever I'm doing, I will work on that. And that's to go through what we call Functional Nefesh. Think, reflect, make a list of the things that you want to improve. But then, now I need to do research. Now I need to investigate. And that's another step of stepping back and thinking, why do I do that? Where do I need to improve the overall relationship, my bigger routine, my approach to things? It's the meta picture. And that's the chakira, that's the mechkar. That's the research and investigation we have to do, that if we don't do it, our repentance won't last. We will all be back here at the same time, same place next year on Yom Kippur. But if we can take a step back and do the bigger picture, right? The holistic, the functional medicine piece, we could solve this forever, and that's what I've been thinking. And I think we should all take that, I guess. And as we go forward now, just to think a little bit more deeply about the things that we're going to repent for in the upcoming season of the high holidays, to try to think more like the functional medical doctor, and try to think about the bigger picture and what's causing all of this so we don't miss how we can actually solve it.
I think that was great. Thank you so much. And I think I think it was such a great end to the series, the series of 3 things that we've done with 3 different people speaking. And I love it because this is coming out on Shivas Arba Tammuz.
So entering this 3 weeks. Here
exactly. This is a great message to give over. And I love how it fits in with this functional psychiatrist, functional medicine approach. That's really fits in so well.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you so much. You're making all of us think. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good summer, everybody.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and all of its guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Yakir Abelow for editing this podcast.